So this is the last session, actually, session 14. And hopefully every one of us learns to deal with some stress in life. The requirement for today.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. So I'll start now. So with the evolution of civilization and advancement of technology, life has become much more unpredictable and prone to success. And stress has become a part and parcel of our life. It is a common problem, and World Health Organization has actually described it as the health epidemic of the 21st century. So although there is no absolute definition of stress because it is perceived and experienced in many ways, but before its management, it is important for us to, understand the concept well. So let me quickly take you through the definition of stress for a more complete understanding of stress management. In most common terms, stress is actually seen as a dynamic condition in which an individual is confronted with an opportunity, constraint, or demand related to what he or she desires and for what the outcomes are perceived to be both uncertain and important. Right? So if we see that stress is most of the time, uh, discussed in negative context, right? But it is not necessarily bad in and of itself. There is a positive side to it as well, right? It can be an opportunity when it offers a potential gain. For example, if you see certain individuals, use stress as their strength. They use it positively to rise to the occasion and perform to their maximum, right? Some of the professionals, if we see, they see challenges at workplace such as, workload or deadline as positive challenges to improve the quality of their work and job satisfaction, right? So these types of stress, have a different relationship with performance. For example, the challenge related stressors, the stressors which are perceived as challenges, right? So they have been reported to cause less strain to an individual as compared to hindrance stressors, which keeps an individual from reaching their goals. For example, like office politics, confusion over your job responsibilities, role ambiguity, right? Task ambiguity, role overload or role conflict. So these kind of stressors are actually destructive in nature, right? And their impact on performance or an individual's well-being is much higher as compared to challenge stressors. Now, all stress, as I said, is not bad. So stress has been mainly categorized into two different types, right? So stress can either be positive or negative. Positive stress, we call it as eustress. You all must be aware. So it is short-lived, a motivating kind of stress, that helps incite us to, for example, prepare for a test or a sporting competition or any other challenge, right? It leads us to alertness and improves performance. Whereas if you look at the other type of stress, that is called as negative stress, or we call it as distress, right? So it's most of the time a long-term type of a stress, anxiety-ridden kind of stress. It impairs our performance and it can negatively affect our psyche, right? And ultimately, consequently, it can make an individual sick, right? So here, if we see, stress can be compared to tension on the strings of a violin, right? So you need enough to make good music. Too much and the string will snap. Too little and then there will be no music, right? So this is how you have to understand stress. So here in this particular slide, you can see the relationship stress has with the performance, right? So low level of stress is also destructive. It can lead to boredom, right? And an optimal level of stress, right, can actually enhance our performance. But when it crosses a certain level and turns into distress, it can lead to burnout. right? So in this particular lecture, I will be mainly talking about how to recognize and deal more effectively with negative stressors in your life, right? Now, if you see, stress can mainly be perceived as, relationship between demands and resources. Right? When demands placed on us, for example, responsibilities, pressures or obligations or uncertainties in the personal and the workplace, in the personal life or at the work life, right? So when demands exceed the resources or the things that we control, then stress is said to occur. Right? So if you have adequate resources, be it job related resources, emotional resources, psychological resources, cognitive resources, right? So these resources can help you actually reduce the stressful nature of demands, right? So entire stress management will be focused upon, enhancing your resources so as to deal with the demands presented on you by various factors. Right? So if we look at the stress model, so I'll quickly go through this. All of you are aware of it, but for the sake of, completing the topic in its entirety. So it is important for us to understand what actually causes stress, right? So what are the potential sources of stress, right? So stress is caused by a lot of factors, right? Which can be there in your physical environment, which can be there in the organization, which can be, within an individual, right? The personal sources, right? For example, in the environment, you can have uh, even pollution, right? Pollution or inadequate ventilation, overcrowding, famine, right? Economic uncertainties in the business environment, right? And then political uncertainties, right? And then technological changes. These all can be an important, environmental sources of stress, right? Apart from this, organization is also an important source of stress where you can have, task related or role related demands placed on you, or there can be interpersonal demands placed on you by the fellow employees, right? You can feel a lack of social relationships at work, or you can experience sexual harassment or other kind of bullying or uncivil behavior from them, right? So these can also be a source of stress. Now, apart from the external factors, personality or individual related factors also play an important role or can are an important stressors in our life. For example, if we talk about personality, so neurotic personality, the individuals with neurotic personality, right, the ones with low emotional stability scores, right, they are more prone to stress because they perceive their environment as more threatening as compared to others, right? So personal disposition also plays an important role in the way we perceive stress, right? And then poor self-concept, poor self-confidence, poor health habits, poor communication skills, interpersonal skills, these also can play an important role when it comes to, causes of stress. So I'll not go into much details of this. Now, these sources of stress can actually have number of consequences for individuals, right? Ranging from physiological to psychological and behavioral level, right? So if you look at these consequences, these can be really detrimental. So it can lead to, some cognitive symptoms such as poor concentration, loss of self-confidence, memory impairment, right? Then apprehension, uncertainty, anxiety, right? So these are some of the other, psychological impacts of stress. Apart from this, there are a number of behavioral consequences as well at workplace and in the personal life. For example, reduced productivity, increased absenteeism or increased turnover, right? And then you can have sleeping disturbances, change in the activity levels, right? Change in your eating habits, emotional outburst, antisocial behavior, right? So these are some of the behavioral consequences. So in a way, you can understand, it can affect your entire well-being, right? If in one of the researches, if you see by Harvard and Stanford University, that stress can actually lower your life expectancy, right? And if you are living with high levels of stress, you are putting your entire well-being at risk, right? Stress wreaks havoc on your emotional equilibrium as well as your physical health, right? It narrows down your ability to think clearly, function effectively, and enjoy life, right? So that's why it is important for us to manage stress. But before coming to stress management, let me talk about an important component of individual difference here in the model. So here you can see individual differences actually tend to moderate the relationship between potential sources of stress and consequences or experience of stress. So what do I mean by individual differences here? Right? Every individual does not respond to situations in the same manner, right? Our perceptions vary, our personalities vary, and according to which we perceive the situations, right? So individual differences, as one difference I talked about was in terms of personality, right? So neurotic individuals are more likely to perceive situations as stressful, right? Apart from this, individuals with external locus of control, those who believe that their destinies are controlled by external factor, right? They are also more susceptible to stress as compared to others, right? And then individuals with low self-concept or poor self-concept, again, this relationship between, sources and consequences becomes stronger for them, right? So this relationship is not universal, right? It varies from individual to individual. So this has, very clear implication when it comes to stress management. So there is no, one size fit all solution for everyone. So before coming to management of stress, it is important for us to see whether stress can actually be managed. So I would like to, share a story before I come back to it. So this is the story of a farmer who owned a faithful old mule, right? So this particular mule fell into farmer's well, and the farmer heard the mule braying, or whatever, mules do when they fall into wells. So after carefully assessing the situation, the farmer sympathized with the mule, but decided that neither the mule nor the well was worth the trouble of saving. Right? Instead, he called his neighbors together and told them what had happened. Right? And enlisted them to help haul dirt to bury the old mule in the well. Right? And put him out of his misery. So initially, the old mule was hysterical. But as the farmer and his neighbors continued, shoveling, and the dirt hit his back, a thought struck him, right? It suddenly dawned on him that every time a shawl load of dirt landed on his back, he should shake it off and step up, right? So this he did, blow after blow, shake it off and step up, shake it off and step up, right? So he repeated it to encourage himself. So no matter how painful the blows or, distressing the situation seemed, the old mule fought panic and just kept right on, shaking it off and stepping up. Right? So you're right. It was not long before the old mule, battered and exhausted, stepped triumphantly over the wall of that well. Right? So what seemed like it would have buried him actually blessed him. Right? All because of the manner in which he handled his adversity. Right? So that's life. So if we face our problems and respond to them positively and refuse to give in to panic, bitterness, or self-pity, right? The adversities that come along to bury us usually have within them the potential to benefit and bless us, right? So it may sometimes, seem like there is nothing you can do about stress, right? So there will never be more hours in a day and your work and family responsibilities will always be demanding, but you have a lot more control than you might think. Right? So effective stress management actually helps you break the hold stress has on your life so that you can be happier, healthier, and more productive. Right? So the ultimate goal is to have a balanced life with time for work, relationships, relaxation, and fun, and the resilience to hold up under pressure and meet the challenges head on. Right? But as I said, stress management is not one size fits all, right? It is a very individual process and there is no one best stress management technique, right? So that's why it is important to experiment and find out what works best for you, right? So Now I'll discuss some of the tips that you can use to manage stress in your personal as well as professional lives and be happy. So the first and foremost step is to identify the sources of stress in your life, right? So stress management, it begins with identifying these unique sources of stress in your life, right? So this is not as straightforward as it may sound, right? So while it may be easy to identify major stressors, for example, if you're changing a job, or moving or going through a divorce, or such kind of major stresses, it is easier for you to pinpoint them. But pinpointing the sources of chronic stress can be more complicated, right? It's not too easy to overlook how your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors contribute to your everyday stress levels. Right? Sure. For example, you may know that you're constantly worried about, work deadlines, but maybe it's your procrastination rather than the actual job demands that is causing you stress. Right? So to identify true sources of stress, you need to closely look at your habits, attitudes, and the excuses that you make. Right? So you need to see, do you explain away stress as temporary? Even though you can't remember the last time you took a breather, right? Or do you define stress as an integral part of your work or home life, right? For example, things are always crazy around here, or as part of your personality. I have a lot of nervous energy, that's all, right? Or do you blame your stress on other people or outside events, or view it as entirely normal and unexceptional? Right? So until you accept the responsibility for the role you play, in creating and maintaining it, your stress level will remain always outside your control. Right? So you need to take personal responsibility for reducing your stress level. So how you can do that? So how you can identify, the sources of stress in your life. So maybe you can maintain a stress journal or a diary, right? So it can help you identify the regular stressors in your life and the way you deal with them. So each time you feel stressed, keep a track of it in your diary and use a stress tracker on your phone. And that also you can do. So keeping a daily account of these activities will enable you to see a pattern and identify the common themes. For example, what you can write is what caused you stress, right? Or you can make a guess if you are unsure, right? So how you felt in that situation, both physically as well as emotionally, right? And then how you acted in response, right? And what you actually did to make yourself feel better. Right? So this is the first or the most important, step towards managing stress in your life, identifying the sources of stress. Now, while stress, you can see it is an automatic response from your nervous system, but some stressors arise at predictable times. For example, your commute to work or a meeting with boss or a family gathering, for example, right? So when handling such predictable stressors, you can either change the situation or change your reaction, right? So when deciding which option to choose in a given situation, it is helpful to think of the 4 A's. 4 A's are really important here. Avoid, alter, adapt, and accept, right? So I'll begin with the first A, avoid. So you should avoid unnecessary stress, right? So this is a preventive measure. Although it is not healthy to avoid a stressful situation that needs to be addressed, but you may be surprised by the number of stressors in your life that you can completely eliminate, right? For example, some of the tips on how you can actually avoid stressors in your life. First is, you can learn how to say no, right? You should know your limits and stick to them, whether in your personal or professional life. Taking on more than you can handle is a recipe for stress, right? So distinguish between the shoulds and the musts, right? And when possible, say no to taking on too much, right? Don't be too harsh on yourself. Then you should also, try to avoid people who stress you out, Although it may not always be possible to do that at workplace, right? Because you don't have the privilege to choose your, colleagues there. But to the extent possible, if someone consistently causes stress in your life, limit the amount of time you spend with that person or end that relationship, right? And then take control of your environment. For example, if evening news makes you anxious, turn off the TV, right? If traffic makes you tense, take a longer but less traveled route, right? For example, if going to market or marketing actually, you find unpleasant, then you can go for online shopping. So these, you need to look for alternatives so as to feel that you have control over your environment, right? And then one of the most important steps here, if you see, is managing time well, right? So pare down your to-do list, right? Most of the people, they manage their time very poorly, right? So there are some of the important, time management techniques that you must have learned maybe in one of the sessions in the FTP as well. So you need to, prepare a daily to-do list, right, of activities that need to be accomplished, right? And you need to prioritize those activities, right? You can make use of Eisenhower matrix here, right? So you need to prioritize these activities on the basis of the urgency and importance, right? Some of the matters may be urgent but not important. Some may be important but not urgent. You need to realize the difference, right? And then you need to schedule these activities on the basis of the priorities set, right? And also you should know your daily cycle and, handle the most demanding tasks at the time when you are most alert and productive, right? And you should avoid all kind of distractions in the form of, regularly checking email or, regularly checking your phone, or such kind of distraction can actually reduce your productivity. And with reduced productivity will be accompanied again by stress, right? So time management principles are again important here. So pare down your to-do list, analyze your schedule, responsibilities, and daily tasks. And if you have got too much on your plate, drop tasks that are not truly necessary to the bottom of the list, or eliminate them, completely from the list, right? And then coming to second A, alter the situation, right? So if you can't avoid a stressful situation, try to alter it, right? So first mechanism to deal with the stress is to avoid to the extent possible. For this strategy actually helps when, the matters are of trivial nature, right? Important matters which need discussions or avoidance strategy can actually backfire, right? So if you can't avoid a stressful situation, now the another strategy to deal with is to alter it or to change the situation, right? So this involves changing the way you communicate or operate in your daily life, right? So how you can alter the situation? So better to express your feelings instead of bottling them up, right? If something or someone is bothering you, right? So be more assertive and communicate your concerns in an open and respectful manner, right? For example, if you've got an exam to study for, or to your family members, your brother or your roommate, uh, uh, they are disturbing you, they are chatty, right? So in that case, you can say upfront that you have just 5 minutes to talk, right? So if you don't voice your feelings, resentment will build and the stress will increase, right? And then another way to alter the situation is be willing to compromise, right? So when you ask someone to change their behavior, so be willing to do the same, right? If you both are willing to bend at least a little, you will have a good chance of finding a happy middle ground, right? So yesterday we were talking about, the importance of open communication when individuals have conflicting goals, right? So open communication can actually help you find mutually beneficial solutions. And then create a balanced schedule. Yes, any doubt here? You can note down your questions and I'll take it up later at the end of the session. PPT is not visible. Is it not visible?
Visible. Now it is visible.
Okay.
Now it is visible.
Okay, so let's continue from here. Now, create a balanced schedule, right? So all work and no play is actually a recipe for burnout. So try to find a balance between work and family life, social activities and solitary pursuits, daily responsibilities and downtime, right? I will talk about creating a balance in life in more detail in my coming slides, right? And then the third A, adapt to the stressors, right? If you can't change the stressor, change yourself, right? You can adapt to stressful situations and regain your sense of control by changing your expectations and attitudes, right? So how you can change yourself? You can maybe, reframe the problems in your mind. Try to view stressful situations from a more positive perspective, right? For example, if you have been laid off, although this situation cannot be, reframed in a positive manner, but still there are some individuals who can see this as an opportunity, to take the severance allowance and start their own business. Please mute your mic. There is some disturbance. Dr. Anila, please mute your mic. Right. Similarly, if you are, stuck in a traffic jam, right? So you can look it as an opportunity to, pause and regroup, listen to your favorite radio station or enjoy some time alone, right? So it's all in the perspective. Please mute your mic. There is a lot of disturbance. Please mute yourself. Surbhi Srivastava, please mute yourself. Yes, and then it is also important for you to look at the bigger picture, right? Take perspective of the stressful situation. Ask yourself how important it will be in the long run, right? Will it matter in a month, a year? Is it really worth getting upset over, right? If the answer is no, then focus your time and energy elsewhere, right? And then it is also important for you to not strive for perfectionism always, because perfectionism is a major source of stress, which can be avoided, right? So adjust your standards. Stop setting yourself up for failure by demanding perfection. Set reasonable standards for yourself and others and learn to be okay with good enough, right? Sometimes this also works. And then gratitude is something that you need to practice on a regular basis. So when stress is getting you down, take a moment to reflect on all things that you appreciate in your life, including your own positive qualities and gifts, right? So this simple strategy can help you keep things in perspective, right? And let's come to the last A, accept the things you can't change, right? So some sources of stress are unavoidable, right? You can't prevent or change stressors such as, death of a loved one that we are experiencing in this pandemic, right? Or a serious illness, right? So in such cases, the best way to cope with the stress is to accept the things as they are, right? So you will find all these lessons in Indian philosophy as well. I'll come to that part, right? So where you can root out the stress completely from your life and lead a healthy life. Right? So you need to accept things as they are. Acceptance may be difficult, But in the long run, it's easier than, railing against a situation you can't change, right? So don't try to control the uncontrollable, right? So many things in life are beyond our control, particularly the behavior of other people. So rather than stressing out over them, focus on the things that you can control, right? And what you can control is the way you choose to react to problems, right? And always look for the upside. So when facing any major challenge, try to look at them as opportunities for personal growth, right? For example, if your own poor choices contributed to a stressful situation, reflect on them, learn from your mistakes, right? So I'll talk about this important point of, focusing on learning as an important way to deal with stress. Then you need to learn to forgive. Accept the fact that we live in an imperfect world and that people make mistakes, right? So let go of anger and resentments. Free yourself from negative energy by forgiving and moving on, right? And as I said, social network can actually play an important role. You need to share your feelings, express what you are going through, right? Even if there is nothing you can do to alter the situation, talk to a trusted friend or make an appointment with a therapist, right? So, identifying sources of stress and then, adopting these particular 4 A's technique of managing stress. Apart from these, there are other ways also that have been suggested to be really helpful when it comes to stress management. And, one of these is physical activity, right? So when you are stressed, the last thing you probably feel like doing is getting up and exercising, right? But physical activity is a huge stress reliever. And you don't have to be an athlete or, spend time in gym to experience the benefits, right? Small exercises at home for 30 minutes or more can actually help you build up your fitness level gradually, right? So the first step is to get yourself up and moving, right? So there are some of the ways in which you can incorporate exercise into your daily schedule, right? You can put on some music and dance around. You can take a pet for a walk, right? You can cycle to, the nearby market or store, right? You can use stairs rather than elevator. You can, also think of parking the car in the farthest spot in the lot and then, walk the rest of the way. That's what I do, right? Then you can also pair up with a friend as an exercise partner and you both can encourage each other to work out, right? So these are some of the ways that you can bring exercise into your routine, right? And already you had a session before this on, meditation, right? So mindfulness or meditation has actually proved to be really, it has been clinically proven to work really well to reduce your stress levels, right? So adding mindfulness element will help you break out the cycle of negative thoughts that often, accompanies overwhelming stress. So while you are exercising, right, make a conscious effort to pay attention to your body and the physical sensations that you experience as you are moving, right? Focus on coordinating your breathing with your movements, for example, or notice how the air or sunlight feels on your skin, right? And then another tip to deal with stress is to connect with others that I have already discussed, right? Having a network of social support always helps, right? So you should have a network of close friends who can help you improve your resiliency to life stressor, right? So there is nothing more calming than spending quality time with another human being who makes you feel, safe and understood, right? It's a natural stress reliever. So reach out to a colleague, help someone else by volunteering, have lunch or coffee with a friend on regular basis, right? Uh, Call or email an old friend in the current times, right? Go for a walk. So these are some of the small steps that you can take, to overcome stress. And then make time for fun and relaxation, right? It is important for you to set aside leisure time, right? Which includes rest and relaxation in your, daily schedule. Don't allow other obligations to encroach. So this is your time to take a break for all responsibilities and, recharge your batteries. Right? So do something that you enjoy on a daily basis. Make time for leisure activities that bring you joy. For example, if you like music, if you like painting, right? If you like exercising, if you like physical activity, games, sports, right? So you need to identify what you really enjoy and do that activity once in a day at least, right? And then keep your sense of humor, right? This act of laughing helps your body fight stress in a number of ways, right? So there are laughing therapies that are being used in many ways to deal with this particular problem, right? And then managing time, I have already discussed, where you need to set your priorities right and avoid any kind of distractions, right? And then apart from this, maintaining a healthy lifestyle is equally important. Right? Eat healthy, reduce caffeine and sugar, avoid alcohol, cigarettes or drugs, right? Get enough sleep, right? So adequate sleep fuels your mind as well as your body, right? So these are important things or a healthy lifestyle choices that you can make to increase your resistance to stress. Right? Apart from these, one of the important findings that I would like to share with you of a research, on coping with the stress. So one of the research suggests that, focusing on learning, right? I'm coming back to that learning point, right? So focusing on learning means, for example, picking up a new skill or gathering new information or, seeking out intellectual challenges, right? So engaging in learning activities has actually been found to, buffer individuals from detrimental effects of stress. How this helps? Learning helps you build valuable instrumental and psychological resources, right? It brings us new information and knowledge that can be used for solving, stressful problems. It equips us with skills and capabilities to address or even prevent future stressors, right? So psychologically, if you see, taking time to reflect on what we know and learn new things helps us develop feelings of competence and self-confidence or self-efficacy, right? So learning helps us also to, connect to an underlying purpose of growth and development, right? So this way we can see ourselves as constantly improving and developing rather than being stuck with, fixed capabilities. So these psychological resources enable us to build resilience in the face of stressors, right? So these are some of the tips that you can adopt in your daily life to deal with the stress. Now, although this is all taught, we all teach in the management classes, but rarely, we talk about lessons from Indian philosophy that can actually provide solutions to almost every human problem. Right? So it is high time that we turn to ancient Indian wisdom to learn how to de-stress ourselves and lead a happy life. Right? The ancient Indian knowledge base, in the form of Vedas, Upanishads, Purans, and Bhagavad Gita, they deal with the fundamental human problem and has solution to almost every problem that we are facing in this modern age. Right? So through these sources, we can actually find an empirical solution to stress. For example, if I talk about Bhagavad Gita, so Lord Krishna has given us a golden formula to combat stress. Right? So do not worry about things that are inevitable, which I talked about in one of the tips for dealing with stress, right? So we often start worrying when we anticipate negative outcomes, for example, not receiving a performance appraisal or not achieving the desired goal, right? Or failing in some exam, right? So such worry is futile. It serves no purpose, right? We should pause for a moment instead and ask ourselves, is worry really going to help us achieve our goal or transcend imagined or real obstacle, right? So mostly all of us know that the answer is categorical no. But then why worry and be stressful, right? So Lord Krishna's advice is to remain balanced in the face of adversities which everyone is bound to experience, right? So let us have, some of the lessons from Indian philosophy that can actually help us deal with stress in a better manner, right? If we adopt that way of life, rarely there will be stress in our life and we can lead a immensely happy life, right? So before, to demonstrate the need for a balanced life, I'd like to share a story of a sad man. Today, if you see, survival seems to be the biggest concern, and that depends on our economic stability, right? So it is as if everybody has to compete in the rat race. So once there was a man who had amassed, riches and fame after a long struggling life. He spent most of his active life pursuing his career and climbing the professional ladder. You can equate him with life of Steve Jobs, right? So as he grew old, he realized to his utter sorrow that his so-called success was hollow, right? He was obese, he had heart disease and was constantly fatigued, right? He was separated from his spouse, estranged from his children, had neglected his parents, right? He was frustrated, depressed, constantly stressed. So his success had cost him his health, family relations, and peace of mind, right? So he was a very sad man and he questioned if he had been wise to pursue wealth as he had. So was it at all worthwhile, right? So what we can learn from this story is that by blindly hankering after worldly wealth and by amassing a huge fortune, one may feel victorious in, the rat race, but becomes a loser on all other fronts. And even if one does win, right, one still remains but a rat, right? So the key is to lead a balanced life, right? It is not necessarily wrong to strive for a stable economic life, but we should live balanced life. We should maintain equilibrium between, running after material wealth and seeking spiritual goals, right? So we should not devote all our time to earning wealth. We should also care about family, health, and mental peace as well, right? After all, what are we earning money for? To have a happy life, healthy life, peaceful life. Earning money should not destroy these very goods, right? So let us go through some of the, learnings from some of the lessons from Indian philosophy. First, as you can see on the slide, is doing your duty and not thinking of the outcome, right? So one of the major causes of stress is the frustration due to unfulfillment of our desires or expectations, right? Sometimes we expect too much, bonuses, promotion, and many more, which may not always become true, right? So this wrong selfish approach towards life must be changed, right? So one should perform his or her duty with great commitment, which is entrusted to him or her, and must not think of the benefits only, right? So what Bhagavad Gita tells, right? So when Lord Krishna told to Arjuna, you have control only on your work and not on its outcomes, right? So this selfless attitude, if followed, can lead you to immense happiness, right? And the second important formula to avoid stress in your life is to not bear grudges, right? So the greatest load we bear all through our life unnecessarily is grudge for others. Again, the slides are not visible. So I think it is.
Lights are
So
visible.
okay. So the moment you start, forgiving others, you are freeing yourself from unnecessary anxieties and sufferings, right? So you should remember the word of Swami Vivekananda here. So what he said is, don't hate others because they are also sons and daughters of the divine, just like you, right? So don't bear grudges. Don't live life with unnecessary fears, right? So most of us tend to live life with many unnecessary fears, which often never become reality. For example, what will happen if I am transferred to this destination or next month, right? What will happen if I am laid off someday, right? So forget all these unnecessary ifs and live life with dignity and happiness, right? With numerous gifts which are showered on us every day. So if you read about the extract from Gitanjali by Ravindranath Tagore, So in his poem, in his Nobel Prize winning book, Gitanjali, he prayed for awakening of the country in a place where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Right? And then the next important learning from our scriptures is, living life in a meaningful way. Right? So human life is the most precious gift in this world. So don't waste it by criticizing people or gossiping. Right? Instead, you should try to utilize it in creative ways so that you can have a lasting impression even after you are not there. Right? So unnecessary criticism, quarrel only can invite negative stress and frustration in your life. Whereas a creative attitude towards life will bring you peace. Right? So what Mahatma Gandhi said, study as if you will live forever, live as if you will die tomorrow. Can there be any better instruction on living meaningful life? Right? And then next important way is to control your anger. Right? So every now and then, in our life, we have an angry argument with our spouse, friend, colleague, or boss. And then, we have later repented for those words. Right? So if you cannot control your anger or similar emotions, though being a human, you can be sure that you are the person most vulnerable to stress, and be prepared to spend many more sleepless nights. Right? So again, borrowing from Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna told a person is happy only if he can control his anger and desires in his present life. Right? And the next strategy that I have already talked about is to have, confidence in yourself. Right? So low confidence is one of the greatest cause of stress. Right? So history of human race, if you see, it has always shown us how confident people, even without money or background, have built empires. Right? And despite, on the contrary, if you see people having everything, if they don't believe on their capabilities, they are bound to lose, and they are more prone to anxiety, tension, or low morale. So believe in your potential, believe in the words that I can do. Right? So again, you can revisit the words of Swami Vivekananda on self-confidence. Have faith in yourself. All power is in you. Right? So be conscious and bring it out. Arise, awake, and stop. Not till the goal is reached. Right? And then overcoming tragedies in your life through your internal strength. Right? Sometimes, as I said, we all have to face unexpected tragedies that we are facing in the current times. Despite our wholehearted attempt to avoid it, tragedy may come in any form. Right? But we should not allow them to overpower us. Right? And we should not become an easy prey to stress. So talk someone you can rely upon and realize the omnipotent fact of the life. Sorrow cannot be everlasting. Right? Today or tomorrow, your happy days will be back. Right? So how soon? That depends on your internal strength. Right? So sorrow and happiness, they all move in a cycle. And then leading a balanced lifestyle. Right? Maintaining a balanced lifestyle, may range from having a balanced diet to regular meditation. Right? So you should avoid factors which I just listed: cigarette, caffeine, drugs. You must not go for these despite all sorts of provocation and stress. Right? People use stress as an excuse for smoking or adopting these, dangerous habits. Right? Apart from this, you can also go for balanced diet and meditation. In Indian mythology, if you see, the best possible stress-free diet was mentioned as sattvic diet. Right? So sattvic diet is something which is light and pure and easy to digest. Right? Fresh fruits, milk, and all. Right? And then another way to lead a balanced life is through yoga and meditation, which are the most powerful ways or popular ways to cope with the increasing stress. Right? So in all religions, prayer and meditation have been told us as the primary way to break free from the ordinary stress-prone life. Right? So these are some of the steps. And apart from this, you can involve yourself in some of the spiritual activities or voluntary activities, doing seva or selfless service. Right? So doing good for others and wanting nothing in return actually gives you a sense of joy and mental relief. Right, which can best be experienced rather than described. So you can give all these, tips a try, and notice that they actually help. Right, but these need to be practiced and these need to be made part of your everyday routine. This should become a way of your life, right? So here there is a formula on the basis of a mnemonic which will help you manage, stress effectively. So I'll share the slide. You can have a look at this. So this is a simple formula that you can adopt, right, which covers almost all the points that I have just talked about. Right. So realizing the importance of, or the dangerous consequences of stress, companies are also coming up with, a lot of wellness programs for their employees. So although I'll not cover it, but if you see, a lot of organizations have adopted such employee assistance program. They are offering a lot of, for example, there is one organization called as Asana, which pays employees to take a nap. Right, so they are coming up with very innovative approaches so as to make their employees stress-free. Google, Intuit, these are such well-known. Microsoft, these are well-known organizations, that have wellness programs well in place for their employees. Right, so these are some of the ways organizations manage stress for their employees. Right, although you have to take charge of the situation, but at the same time, organizations are also taking a lead in this direction, because ultimately stress affects the productivity and, the bottom line of these organizations. So it is important for these organizations to keep their employees stress-free. All right, so this was all about stress management. Moving on to the next part of the presentation, that is managing conflicts. So now, in most simple words, if I describe, conflict may be described as, a friction between individuals due to difference of either opinions, ideas, beliefs, values, or objectives, right? But it is important to understand that conflict is simply a perception. Right? If no one is aware of the conflict, then it is generally believed that conflict doesn't exist. Right? So it mainly begins, when one party perceives that the other party has negatively affected something that the first party cares about. Right? So this is about the concept of conflict. Now, if you look at the literature, right, you will notice a great deal of transitions in the conflict thought. Right? Earlier, if you talk about the early approach, or which we call as traditional view of conflict, it assumed that all conflict is bad, right? It represents a kind of malfunctioning in the group and it must be avoided, right? So this view was prevalent till 1930s and 40s, right? Here conflict was seen as a dysfunctional outcome resulting from various factors, right? Then came the a different perspective, another school of thought which we call as interactionist view of conflict, right? So they propose that conflict can be a positive force in a group, right? And some level of conflict is necessary for group to perform effectively, right? So according to this particular view, conflict should be encouraged, as minimal level of conflict is required for group to be self-critical, viable, and creative, right? Then came the current view, which we call as managed view of conflict, right? So this particular school of thought, which we also call as, resolution focused view of conflict, it represents the current state of thinking in the area. And this particular view actually questioned the interactionist view, right? And they identified problems with encouraging conflict. They said that encouraging conflict works only in very specific situation. Right? Workplace conflicts, according to this particular view, are not productive because they divert the attention away from the job tasks. right? So in my yesterday's lecture, I talked about, different types of conflict, right? Task related or relationship or process related. So according to this particular, view, the task conflict or process conflict, which I said that moderate level are needed for effective functioning, right? So they can easily escalate to the level of relationship. There is a positive relationship between, cognitive conflict and relationship conflict. Individuals cannot neatly compartmentalize their disagreements in, these three neat categories. It is related to task, it is related to relationship, right? So a general disagreement on how the task gets accomplished or on the goal or the priorities can actually go down to the level of relationships and can breed interpersonal hostilities between the members, right? So this view says that conflict is natural and inevitable outcome in any group, and it focuses on productive resolution of conflict. Right, so you can see the trend, right? Initially, the focus was on eliminating the conflict, then it moved on to encouraging the conflict, and now it has moved on to finding constructive methods for resolving conflict, right? So that their disruptive influence can be minimized. Now, why conflict arises? There can be a number of, antecedent conditions for conflict to arise, right? So there can be no two individuals are same, right? So that is the prime cause of conflict, right? So because no two individuals are same, we all perceive differently, see things differently, right? We have different ideologies, personalities, approaches, right? And then communication also plays an important role or acts as an important antecedent condition for conflict to arise. And then resources are always limited. So competition for limited resources also leads to conflict in organizations, right? And then, as I said, personal variables, personal differences among individuals in terms of their value systems, personalities, right? And then if you talk about organizational conflict, it can occur between departments because of different priorities or goals, right? So in all, it can be summarized into three broad categories, the antecedent conditions, right? So there has to be some kind of, opposition or incompatibility for conflict to arise, right? So these antecedent conditions can be mainly categorized into three main categories. For example, communication is an important source of conflict. How? There are semantic difficulties, right? Then there are misunderstandings because of, using differing word connotations, jargons, or insufficient exchange of information, or because of noise in the communication channel, because of which the message is not clear, right? But at the same time, over communication can be a problem. How? Because increase in communication again is functional up to a certain point, and beyond which it is possible to over communicate, right? And which can lead to conflict, right? Apart from communication related factors, structural factors also lead to conflict sometimes. How can structural factors play a role here? For example, size of the group or size of the team, and then the degree to which jobs are specialized, right? The ambiguity that you have in your jobs, or the incompatibility in the goals or incompatibility among the members of a group, right? And then if leadership style is not suited to the followers, right? Then if the reward system is zero-sum game, right? Where gain of one comes at the expense of others, right? That also is a cause of conflict. Then interdependence again is a major cause for conflict, right? And apart from this, personal variables, right? We all are different, as I said, different personality types, different value systems, again, are a source of conflict, right? And then, so if you see the entire conflict process, right, begins from here. There has to be a source, there has to be some kind of incompatibility, which can result from these three possible, antecedent conditions. And then comes the cognition and personalization. What is cognition and personalization? Here, as I said, conflict is said to occur only if the parties are aware that it exists, right? So this is called as perceived conflict, right? So this is the stage of recognition or cognition, right? So you are aware that conflict exists, which is perceived conflict, and then you emotionally respond to it. You express your emotions, right? Which leads to anxiety or, other kind of emotional expressions, right? So which we call as felt conflict, right? When individuals start feeling angry or they start feeling tension or frustration, the conflict goes down to the feelings level, right? And we call it as felt conflict, right? After that comes the intentions, how to handle conflict, right? So these intentions actually intervene between people's perception and their behavior, right? Once you have realized whether conflict exists or, in the second stage, conflict issues are actually defined, what conflict is all about, right? And then comes the intentions, which actually represent the determinations to act in a given way, right? So people behave in different ways according to their intentions, right? So it is a decision to act in a given way. But it is also important for us to understand that behavior always does not accurately reflect intentions, right? Sometimes people act out of emotions or, they become illogical or irrational, right? So intentions always do not, translate into behavior. Sometimes there is a mismatch, right? So if we talk about intentions, there is, these conflict handling intentions are on two dimensions. If we see competing dimensions, I would say, first is cooperativeness and second is assertiveness, right? So what is cooperativeness? What is assertiveness? So cooperativeness is the degree to which one party's attempt to satisfy the other party's interest, right? And assertiveness is the degree to which one party attempts to satisfy one's own interest, right? So these are the two competing conflict handling dimensions, right? And along these dimensions, we have primarily 5 types of intentions that people use to manage conflict, right? So first, as you can see, is competing, right? Competing is high assertiveness and uncooperativeness, right? It is an attempt to satisfy one's own need at the expense of the other individual, right? So this can be done by either using formal authority or physical threats or, ignoring the claims of the other party, right? So when using a competing approach, one may use the authority of one's office. I am the boss, so we will do it my way, right? So here a person attempts to satisfy his or her own interest regardless of its impact on the other party. So when competition is an appropriate strategy, we will talk about, conflict. When we talk about these conflict management strategies, I'll talk about the situation in which all these strategies or intents are more appropriate, right? And then comes the accommodation, right? Accommodation, as you can see on the slide, it represents cooperativeness and assertiveness, right? So here it involves satisfying the interest of the other parties while neglecting one's own, right? So here accommodation emphasizes preserving positive and friendly relations over protecting one's personal rights and privileges, right? And then comes the avoidance approach, which we were talking about in the first part of the presentation on stress as well, right? So avoidance approach involves uncooperativeness and unassertiveness, right? So it neglects the interest of both the parties by sidestepping the conflict or postponing a solution, right? For example, a manager who never gets around to deliver negative feedback and appraisal to his or her subordinates exemplifies, the avoidance approach to conflict. Right, so avoidance can be really risky strategy, especially for important matters where decisions are needed to be taken on an immediate basis, right? But there are certain situations where it can work. So we will talk about those. And then another conflict handling intention is compromising, right? It is an intermediate between assertiveness and cooperativeness, if you see on the graph. Right, so compromise is an attempt to obtain partial satisfaction for both the parties, right? In the sense that both receive the proverbial half loaf. Right, so to accommodate this, both the parties are asked to make sacrifices to obtain a common gain. Right, but this approach actually helps each party some portion of what he or she wants. Right, and lastly, the most effective strategy is collaboration. Right, which is, taking into account the interest of both the parties. Right, so here the attempt is to fully satisfy the concerns of both the parties. So there is a cooperation, there is a search for mutually beneficial outcomes, right? So the parties strive for a win-win solution. Right, so in this way, both the parties feel that they have won. So these are some of the prime conflict handling intentions, and these are also some of the ways to manage conflict. I will talk about these once I come to conflict management part. Right? Now, when most people think of, conflict situations, they actually tend to think of behavior. So this is the stage where conflict becomes visible. Right? So, this particular stage, if you see, you can see the conflict on a continuum here. Right? So you can see this stage as a dynamic process of interaction between the parties. Right? So here the statements, actions, and reactions are made by conflicting parties to implement their own intentions. Right? So if we see this conflict behavior can be visualized on a continuum. At the lower end, if you see, are the conflicts that are subtle, indirect, and reduced forms of tensions. But conflict intensities increase as you move up the continuum. Right? Conflicts at the higher end are dysfunctional, and functional conflicts are mostly confined to the lower end. For example, if you see in the lower end, you have minor disagreements or misunderstandings, right? Overt questioning or challenging others. But at the other extreme end, right, you can have strikes or riots, right? So these are extremely dysfunctional, right? So if conflict is dysfunctional, what can parties do to de-escalate it? Right? Or what options exist if conflict is too low and needs to be increased? Right? So this brings us to the technique of conflict management. Right? So here you make use of either conflict resolution or conflict stimulation techniques based upon the need. If you need to reduce dysfunctional conflict, we'll go for resolution techniques. Again, screen is not visible. Okay.
Now visible.
Okay. Yes, so coming to the conflict management part, right? So conflict management is not about, eliminating the conflict completely. It is about reaching the optimal level of conflict. right? So it involves both the resolution as well as stimulation techniques. So what are the techniques that are available with us to manage conflict, right? So a number of techniques have been proposed if you look at the literature, right? Both for an individual and the techniques that are available with the organization, right? So we will look at both the aspects here. For example, the first conflict resolution technique can be problem solving. So face-to-face meeting with the conflicting parties, for the purpose of identifying the problem and resolving it through open communication, right? So this could be one of the technique that I discussed in, my lecture yesterday on teamwork, right? Open discussion to solve problems is really important, right? So communication should be open, parties should be transparent to each other so that problems are assessed from all possible angles so that mutually beneficial solutions can be proposed, right? And then superordinate goals is also one of the ways to look at the problem. So creating a shared goal, right, that cannot be attained without the cooperation of each of the conflicting parties. This is also one of the ways to resolve conflict, right? And then expansion of resources, right? As I said, conflict is mainly because of limited resources. If resources were unlimited, there would be no conflict at all, right? So one of the ways you can, organizations also, adopt this particular method. For example, when a conflict is caused by scarcity of a resource. For example, if there are, suppose, only 2 promotion opportunities, if management can, can think of creating a new position so that all 3 individuals can be promoted, right? So this could be if they all were capable, right? In that way, that particular conflict can be resolved. So money, promotion opportunities, or office space, these all can be expanded so as to take care of the conflict, so as to, create a win-win solution for all. Right? And then avoidance. So avoidance I discussed as one of the conflict handling intentions, right? So when avoidance works, right? So as I said, when an issue is trivial or more important issues are pressing, then avoiding such trivial issues can be a solution, right? So to let people cool down and regain perspective, avoidance works. When you perceive no chance of, satisfying your concerns, then also avoiding works. And when you feel that others can resolve conflict more effectively, then avoiding works, right? And then next, as you can see, is smoothing, right? So smoothing is like playing down the differences and, emphasizing or identifying common areas of interest between conflicting parties. Right, so this is one of the key ways to, reduce conflict or reduce conflict between the parties, right? Identifying the common interests, right? So whenever there is a negotiation, whenever there is a bargaining, right? So if it is done, if it is to be done in an effective manner, the parties should be open to each other. They should share their objectives very clearly, right? So that common interests can be identified and mutually beneficial solutions can be looked at, right? And then next, as you can see, is compromise. Compromise is again one of the conflict handling intentions that I discussed, right? So when compromise works, right? So here both the parties give up something of value, right? But they achieve some part of what they wanted, right? So compromising, although it is not, advisable in all situations, but to achieve temporary settlements to complex issues, it can work, right? To arrive at expedient solutions under time pressure, you can go for it. Or, when opponents with equal power are highly committed to mutually exclusive goals, then also compromising may work. And, as a backup, when collaboration or competition is unsuccessful, then people usually go for compromising, right? So this can be another strategy. So now that I'm talking about these intentions, let me cover all the possible intentions as possible conflict management strategies. So accommodation, right? We also talked about accommodation, where you keep the interest of other party above yours, right? So here it is usually done to preserve the relationships. right? So when this particular strategy is useful, so when issues are more important to others than they are to you, right? When you want to satisfy others and maintain cooperation, then this strategy may work, right? And then to allow subordinates to develop by learning from mistakes, then also accommodating can work, right? And when to you harmony and stability are especially important, then people go for accommodating, right? And especially when you are wrong, to allow a better position to be heard, to learn, and to show your reasonableness, you can go for accommodation as a conflict management strategy, right? And then comes competing, right? Although least effective of all, but it is needed in some of the situations. So, so when competing can work, where unpopular actions need implementing, for example during cost cuttings, right? When you have to enforce unpopular views or discipline someone, right? And when a quick decisive action is vital, for example in case of emergency, right? And it can also be used against people who take advantage of non-competitive behavior, right? And lastly comes the collaboration, which I said is the most effective strategy, right? Here, the aim is to find an integrative solution, right? When both sets of concerns are too important to be compromised, right? And it is also used when your objective is to learn, right? And when you want to merge insights from people with different perspectives, or when you want to gain commitment by incorporating concerns into a consensus, right? So then these strategies work. Now, apart from these handling intentions, organizations also adopt some of the strategies to deal with conflict. As you can see, is authoritative command, right? It is like arbitration, right? So when management uses its formal authority to resolve the conflict and then communicates its decision to the parties involved, right? So usually a leader plays this role, right? When a situation reaches a stalemate, right? But it has to be done in a fair manner, right? And then altering the human variable. So here we are talking about behavioral changes through training. People can be trained to change their attitudes or behaviors. They can be given trainings on conflict management, right? So by altering human variable, again, you can reduce the conflict and bring it to the desired level, right? And then altering the structural variables. Sometimes, restructuring also helps, right? So organizations can restructure themselves, change the interaction pattern, reporting relationships, right? They can create transfers, create new positions, right? So that also sometimes helps. For example, if two individuals are having regular conflict, right? You change the reporting relationships, right? And then apart from resolution, when conflict level is low and you want to introduce conflict, right? So the group has become so passive, right? In that case, it is important for you to introduce conflict so that group remains, responsive to change, right? So what you can do is you can bring in outsiders, right? So if a group is so passive, right, members are not expressing themselves. So bringing in a person whose backgrounds, values, or attitudes can be completely different from the people in the group, right? So that can bring some heterogeneity, that can stir the group, and then can make them little more active. And then comes the role of devil's advocate also. So appointing a critique which actually questions the majority position, that is also one of the ways to deal with the conflict, right? So if we see, conflict actually acts as antidote to group think, which we were talking about in the yesterday's class. Right? And sometimes communication can also play a role in enhancing the level of conflict. You can use ambiguous communication, right? So there are gossips in the organization. So you can just send an ambiguous message, right? And that can stir the group, right? And lastly, restructuring the organization again is one of the ways, right? So realigning work groups or altering rules and regulations, increasing interdependence among members. This is also can increase the conflict. Now, coming to the last stage of conflict, that is the outcomes. So the action and reaction interplay between the two parties which happened in the behavioral stage actually results in some consequences, which can be functional or dysfunctional depending upon the way, you know, conflict was managed, right? Please mute yourself. Right, so conflict is functional when it increases performance, right, and other important or positive outcomes, and it is dysfunctional when it hinders performance, right? So it is in terms of functional outcomes, conflict increases group performance. How? As I said, you know, conflict allows individuals to discuss problems more openly, right? It does not allow the group to rubber stamp, you know, the decisions that are based upon, you know, inadequate considerations or weak assumptions, right? It avoids groupthink, as I said, right? So that way, if all the views are considered, information is pooled sufficiently, it enhances quality of decisions, it enhances group performance, it stimulates, you know, creative and innovative ideas, right? It also encourages interest and curiosity of members, right? It leads to problem solving, right? It also leads to self-evaluation or reassessment of goals, right? So if group is interacting on a regular basis and when they are taking conflict positively, they are accepting the conflict and taking the responsibility for resolving it, right? It can lead to self-evaluation and a positive change, right? And when we look at the dysfunctional outcomes, so dysfunctional consequences can include, you know, discontent because of, you know, uncontrolled opposition among the members. It can reduce group effectiveness because of inadequate exchange of information, because of presence of groupthink, right? It can reduce the you know, communication among the members. It can reduce cohesiveness, right? When there's too much hostility, member may not talk, as a result of which cohesiveness will suffer, and, you know, group goals can actually be subordinated to the infighting among group members, right? So lastly, so I'll just close here. So lastly, I would like to suggest you this 4-point formula, right? So when conflict arises, you will, you know, not have time to think about the entire conflict process as I just talked about, right? So the key is to begin to incorporate the principles and practice them on regular basis, right? Let them become part of who you naturally are, right? So when you are in a conflict situation, you can always tell yourself to stop, right? So you need not panic, you need not react, right? Tell yourself to stop. This will help you to not react quickly and will give you a few mental seconds so as to begin processing the situation in a more controlled way, right? So adopt this 4-point formula of STAR when you face any conflict. Don't panic, don't react, right? Give yourself a pause, think about the problem, gather information, and then decide the best course of action by keeping in mind the concerns of the other party, and then respond respectfully by communicating your understanding of situation and what can work for both the parties. So this is all from my side. Thank you. I'll close the session here. Let me know if there are any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Richa. Participants, if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
So yesterday also you had no question. Today also no question. So I hope you were hearing me and did not, mute your system and were doing some other work.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I have a question, if I may, please.
Your voice is not very clear. If you can type your question in the chat box.
Is it okay, ma'am, now? Better?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Ma'am, often we use this word conflict or conflict management. I have been also teaching this topic in development of generic skills. However, a disagreement, I mean, by definition, if we go, it's a disagreement. But when a person is trying to put forth his or her views, sometimes even that is considered as a conflict in an organization. Like, the boss will suddenly say, don't argue. But at times, it's not that we are trying to argue, we are trying to put forth our point of view. So, when the conflict occurs typically between a subordinate and a supervisor, and you know, it is like, especially the subordinate is trying to put forth his or her views. How should we take it forward in that case, ma'am? I mean, I'm sure most of us do face this challenge at workplace.
See, this problem has to be treated from root. First, the culture of the organization needs to be open so that members can share their viewpoints. As I said, there will always be conformity pressures, right? So members should be open to the views of others first, right? And if they do not understand it, they should be trained to understand what conflict exactly is. If they are, considering someone expressing his views as a conflict, that is completely a wrong understanding of the concept, right? So that really needs more brushing up, right? So first they need to be trained to understand what exactly a conflict is, right? And then they should be made aware of this particular disease of groupthink so that they do not practice, right? So awareness is actually something that is needed, and that will ultimately lead to uh, uh, to avoid such kind of problems in future. So just not expressing, I would not, this will not qualify as a conflict.
Yeah.
This is
Okay.
just like suppressing your views, right? So that
Yeah,
is not a
yeah.
conflict.
Okay.
And if they are doing it, that is simply, avoidance way of, dealing with the things.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Fine. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So there is a question from Dr. Anisha Sharma. How to decide which strategy to be used in a particular situation? So I hope you listened to me in the last few minutes where I was describing the situations in which each of the strategies works best, right? So you need to identify what matters to you, right? So you need to see whether you want to satisfy your own concerns or the concerns of the other party, right? So you need to weigh the importance of both for both the parties, right? And accordingly choose a particular response to it, right? Always strive for collaboration or, expansion of resources. That is said to be the best strategy in most of the situations wherever possible, right? Other strategies like competition or, avoidance, these can, there is a possibility of backfiring. I hope I have answered your question.
जुगाड़ लगाते हैं, दो चार को जुगाड़ है उसका।
So you need to
उससे
clearly
कुछ
understand
पता-
what do you, mean by collaboration. Collaboration is something where you try to, satisfy the concerns of both yourself and the other party involved. So when both tends to gain from a particular solution, then why will they, why will this particular question occur that they'll take you for granted? So depending upon the issue and situation, you need to choose the right approach, because I need to understand this question in a little more detail. I don't know in what context you are talking about. So maybe you can write to me on my email so that, we can discuss it in more detail. Any other question? So I'm typing my email ID here in the chat box. So if you want, you can always write to me. So I'll share all the resources with the course organizers and PPT and the other material in case you want, for a more understanding of both the topics that I covered. So Smriti ji, I think there are no more questions. So I think we can close the session now.
Yes, Dr. Richa. Thank you so much for conducting the sessions on both the days.
Thank you.
Participants, do you want to take a 20-minute break, and at 3:30 you can join me for the quiz? So stay logged in. I'll share the link here and on the WhatsApp group as well.
Smriti ji, as the control is with me, so shall I end the meeting or just leave the meeting?
You can stop the recording and leave the meeting. उधर save हो जाएगा.
I don't know, because it is automatically getting saved on the cloud, I guess.
ठीक है.
So I'll close the meeting.
Yes, close the meeting.
Okay.